The air in the courtroom was thick with tension the moment Jasmine Crockett entered. Known for her sharp intellect and poised delivery in Congress, she wasn't just any guest on Judge Judy's courtroom stage. She was a symbol of modern justice, meeting old-school authority. Judge Judy, a legend in her own right, famous for her fiery style and quick judgments, sat tall. Her signature scowl, set as if preparing for battle. It began with formalities, small back and forths, meant to warm the scene, but both women were visibly firm in their presence. Judy's tone, though, was noticeably dismissive. She repeatedly interrupted Jasmine, cutting her explanations short and pressing with increasingly hostile questions. Jasmine, however, stayed calm. The audience could feel the conflict brewing, one of generation, of style, of authority versus resistance. And as Judy leaned in with yet another sharp comment, viewers held their breath. This wasn't just television, it was about to become history. Judy launched into a loud critique of Jasmine's prior statements, accusing her of filibustering and sidestepping. She said Jasmine was dodging, weaving around direct answers. What the judge hadn't anticipated was the steel spine behind Jasmine's quiet grace. Jasmine paused, took a breath, and replied with composure that seemed to freeze the room. With all due respect, I speak the way I do because I carry the weight of communities you've never had to represent. It wasn't just a line. It was a blow struck with words, not volume. The courtroom murmured. Judge Judy, startled, shifted in her seat. The power dynamic teetered. Judy, known to dominate every guest she confronted, was being countered by something stronger than defiance. It was controlled power, and that silence. Between them, it wasn't empty. It was Jasmine reclaiming space, without shouting, without breaking. From there, things didn't simmer, they ignited. Judge Judy tried to regain control by talking over Jasmine, raising her voice louder with each interruption. She said, "This is my courtroom and I ask the questions." But Jasmine, unmoved, maintained eye contact and calmly answered, not with fire, but with truth. "I am used to courtrooms where power is louder than justice," she said, "but I've also learned that the people watching at home care more about truth than tone." This wasn't a guest anymore, this was someone holding up a mirror to the system itself. Judy blinked, paused, and uncharacteristically didn't interrupt. In that moment, Jasmine Crockett owned the room without ever standing up. Her voice, though steady and low, carried more authority than the gavel Judy held in her hand. Clips of the moment began circulating within hours. Social media exploded. Hashtags like #Crockett claps back and #Judge Judy silence trended globally. People dissected every second of the confrontation. TikTok creators reenacted the exchange. Political analysts debated it. Late-night shows played segments of it in stunned admiration. Jasmine Crockett had walked into a space built to silence dissent and left with the microphone. Her ability to remain composed, to resist being pulled into a shouting match, and instead control the energy with intelligence and grace became the subject of academic and media commentary. Schools started using the clip as an example of emotional regulation and rhetorical skill. It wasn't just a viral moment, it became a case study in the power of calm resistance. Meanwhile, Judge Judy's camp released a short statement, calling the segment a robust conversation. But many viewers weren't satisfied. Calls for a formal apology spread online. Critics accused Judy of attempting to belittle a sitting Congresswoman and crossing lines under the pretense of courtroom control. Some of her longtime fans even expressed disappointment. They had tuned in expecting classic Judy logic and assertiveness, but not hostility or condescension. On the other hand, Jasmine didn't speak much about the event after it happened. Her team stated that the Congresswoman's presence and composure speak for themselves, and that was enough. That silence spoke volumes. She didn't need to defend herself. She'd already said everything that needed saying. On live television, under pressure, with cameras rolling and critics watching, what this encounter revealed was larger than two women in a courtroom. It was about how women, especially women of color in positions of authority, are often forced to navigate environments hostile to their presence. Jasmine Crockett didn't just survive that environment, she transformed it. In refusing to raise her voice, she redefined what it means to hold power on screen. Her refusal to engage in the performance of anger while still holding her ground became the moment's core message. That message resonated far beyond the show. It found its way into conversations at dinner tables, in classrooms, on news panels. People weren't just talking about what happened, they were questioning why it happened, how often it happens, and what needs to change. Asterisk behind the scenes, producers reportedly were unsure whether to even air the full episode. Some feared backlash. But when they saw the early online reaction, they leaned in. This wasn't a PR crisis. This was television gold. Ratings soared. Downloads spiked. But even with the commercial success, there was unease. Had the show gone too far? Had Judy crossed into disrespect? These were uncomfortable questions for a brand built on tough love and legal insight. The show's legacy now had a new chapter 1, where a guest challenged not just a verdict, but the very structure of how power is displayed on daytime TV. Jasmine had pulled back the curtain. The audience saw everything. Jasmine's reply wasn't just shocking, it was measured brilliance. She said things many women dream of saying in high-pressure, hostile environments but rarely get the chance. Her every word, carefully chosen, reminded viewers that being composed isn't the same as being passive, that courage doesn't always come in volume, but in the refusal to bow to it. Her words challenged the old television model where control meant dominance and guests were expected to shrink. Jasmine, instead, expanded. She didn't insult. She didn't storm off. She stayed. She spoke. And that shook the entire room. Viewers who had never even heard of her were suddenly Googling her background, watching her speeches, and following her social media. Asterisk in the days that followed. Jasmine received invitations from national news networks, universities, and advocacy organizations. They wanted her to speak, to expand on what had happened, to guide conversations about public discourse and civility. But Jasmine didn't pivot to media glory. She continued her legislative work with the same quiet determination. The courtroom was just another stage, one commentator said, but Jasmine was already the main act. The power of her presence extended beyond the segment. It became a reminder that you don't have to win every argument, but you can own every moment if you stay true to yourself. Asterisk, Judge Judy, in later episodes, subtly shifted her tone. She appeared more restrained, occasionally even reflective. Whether that was the result of public pressure or personal insight is unknown, but the shift was noticed. Jasmine's impact had echoed through the format. It became harder for future guests to be steamrolled, knowing that someone before them had stood tall without shouting. Jasmine Crockett changed the script not just for herself, but for everyone who would come after her. Her strength wasn't just a personal victory, it became a public example. That kind of transformation doesn't fade, it lingers. Asterisk, the moment also sparked broader cultural dialogues. Editors wrote essays on black professionalism, tone policing, and systemic bias. Activists cited Jasmine's example in workshops and forums. On college campuses, her response became part of syllabi in communication and gender studies. She became a modern icon not just of resilience but of strategic power. She reminded a generation watching that grace under fire can outshine aggression. That listening before responding isn't weakness, it's strength. That being underestimated can be an advantage. And that you can flip power structures without ever raising your voice. Asterisk in retrospect. The clash wasn't really a clash at all. It was a test, a public, unscripted moment where two models of leadership collided. One rooted in volume and tradition. The other grounded in modern dignity and resolve. Judge Judy, the veteran, met Jasmine Crockett, the rising force, and the world got to watch that meeting unfold. But it wasn't the loudest voice that won. It was the one that stayed grounded. In a media landscape often dominated by shouting, matches, and performative rage, Jasmine gave us something different: clarity. Asterisk. Years from now, people might forget the exact words that were said, but they will remember how they felt watching Jasmine Crockett that day. The poise, the timing, the silence that carried more weight than noise. That is the mark of true influence, not just being seen, but being felt. It's not just changing the conversation, but changing how we have conversations. She didn't scream. She didn't retaliate. She reminded the world that even in hostile spaces, integrity can still be the loudest sound. Asterisk, the segment became a landmark moment in TV courtroom history. It's not because someone shouted, but because someone didn't. Jasmine Crockett proved that. You can disrupt systems without chaos, that you can lead with words that cut deeper than volume. She reminded us that respect isn't something you demand by silencing others. It's something you earn by standing firm in the face of provocation. Her actions echoed beyond the show, into culture, into politics, and into the collective memory of everyone who watched.